So I think I have about 50 minutes, right? So we can stay on schedule. I was told that my bio didn't make it to the document, so I'll spend a minute or two telling you who I am. And then I want to say a little bit about the conversation I just walked in on, which is the whole question of what is fact, what is truth. I think it's a crucial question these days. So, but first, a little bit about me. So I'm the director and founder of a group called the Interfaith Assembly on Homelessness and Housing. We've been around since 1985. At this point, it's more than half my life I've been doing this work. And it's been, for me, very inspiring and very empowering. And I'm happy to share a little bit of it with you. So we started, now let me just say personally, my faith is Judaism, but I've never, and I was bar mitzvah, but I've never been very religious. But I attended an event at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in 1982 that inspired me. And I connected with the person who ran the place, the dean, and he invited me to get involved. And then my interests working with him and people who had come to this conference led me to be interested in hunger and then homelessness. And I found myself in the middle of a series of conversations, out of which grew an effort in which we, as a group of people of different faiths, wanted to bear witness to the crisis of homelessness. What we were really saying was, no matter what your faith tradition, is this what God is asking us to do as a people? Is God saying it's okay for people to be living on the street or in shelters? And we said no. All of our faiths tell us we need to stand in solidarity with those who are in need. So we would go to places where homelessness was visible, to welfare hotels, to shelters, to drop-in centers, to soup kitchens, and we would basically ask the question. And then we decided, so we hold an event, and then we decided we would go to New York, to City Hall, where, when the budget was being finalized, because as William Sloane Coffin and many others have reminded us, a budget is a moral document. When our city, or when our state, or when our country says this is what we're going to spend money on, that says this is what we value. We decided we'd go down to City Hall when they were deciding on how they were going to spend their money, and we would say, don't forget people who are homeless. And so we'd go to a church or a synagogue near City Hall, we'd have the worship service, we'd march into the park, and we'd stay overnight. We started in 1985, we stayed overnight in 1985, 1986, 1987. And then in 1988, we started with about 400 people in the church, had about 100 people in the park, we were ready to spend the night, and we had this torrential rainstorm. And in the morning, there were 12 of us left. And of those 12, 6 of us were homeless. And the homeless folks, a lot of them were veterans, so they helped us to figure out how to, make ourselves at home. We put the benches on their sides and built shelters. We got wood and burned it in the garbage cans to stay warm. It was a particularly cold, rainy night, June 1st, 1988. And that morning, we had arranged to meet with some city council members, the most progressive city council members, to basically brief us on what should we be aware of in the budget, what should we be calling for, which they told us. But what they also said to those of us who were homeless was, but we're here because we're members of city council that care about homelessness. You need to talk to the other members of the council that didn't come to this meeting because they need to hear from you. So the folks who were with us who were homeless, they said, well, we want to go back into the park. We want to talk to the other members of city council. We want to stay in the park until the budget's over. And we said, look, that could be 30 days. Talk about staying outside for 30 days. They said, look, some of us already live out in the street, but we were just told we can make a difference. And they moved back into the park. I had my old Volkswagen van. They said, we've got some people we want to get. So we went to Port Authority and Grand Central, and we started loading up the van and bringing people over. Within a few days, we had 40 people living in the park. And they established their own form of governance. They would go into City Hall every day and listen to the deliberations. They actually ingratiated themselves into the office of a council member. They were using his phones and using his copy machine, and they became a part of the scene in City Hall during that budget process. The press loved them. They would interview them every day. The Mayor Koch, hated them because he was making their life a mess. And so they moved in and they had tents, and then they brought the They brought the sanitation department and they, back with a big backhoe, and all their tents ended up in the garbage. And then they were sleeping on the benches, so they brought the park people in to clean the benches, and they stood up and they waited for them to dry, then they went back down. Then they brought the people in to paint the benches, and they waited for them to dry. They sat back down. He could not get rid of them. And every morning they'd greet him and say, "Good morning, Mayor Koch," and he hated that. And then they delivered a letter to him saying, "We're sure that you love the city as much as we do, and we just want an opportunity to give back. We just want an opportunity to work and earn enough so we can afford housing." And he lost every single public perception battle with these people because they were respectful, dignified, people. They just didn't have a home. And the vigil went on, and actually what ended up happening, the budget was finished. The city wanted to give us a permit retroactively to stay in the park because they didn't want to acknowledge we were breaking the law, but we didn't have any use for that. And then the budget was over, and the group decided to continue their presence in the park until Christmas Day. For 200 days, they were in the park, every day. When it got cold, we found a church for them to stay in, but they were back every day. And they called themselves Homeward Bound Community Services, because they were there giving information to other homeless people who didn't quite know how to handle themselves. And they were there advocating, and they got an amazing amount of press. And I believe that they really changed the way the public viewed homeless people. Because they were really trying to help themselves. They were advocating themselves and saying, "We're New Yorkers, we care about New York. Please give us a chance to help ourselves and to help others. And to support ourselves." And that experience led us to think that if we were going to advocate for public policy change, we should have people who are homeless sharing their story. Because budgets are not just numbers, budgets are people. And we need to see those faces of the people that the budgets are there to serve. So initially we decided to help them to tell their story more effectively, and with New York Catholic Charities, we started setting up a speakers bureau training. But as we were kind of conceiving of this, we realized these people aren't homeless because they're not good public speakers. That's not their problem. That may help us, but that's not why they're homeless. They're homeless because something terrible has happened to them. And if we really want to have an honorable relationship with them, we need to figure out how we can help them heal from that trauma and help them find the resources and help them find solidarity and community. Because as I've learned, in my work, homelessness is really isolation. I mean, this is why having a pet is so important, because when you're homeless, you're disconnected. You're homeless when every other option has failed. You wouldn't be homeless if a friend would let you sleep on their couch or a family member would let you sleep in a spare room. You're homeless because you've got no options left. So when you're homeless, you're disconnected. You're alienated. You're alone. And so we developed a program with New York Catholic Charities, a 3-month program, where people have a chance to build a sense of community, where they get a chance to share their story with each other, where we match them with a mentor who helps them work on their goals, and we bring in community experts to lead a conversation about important topics about how they can get back on their feet. And we've been doing this now since 1989. And I helped create it with my friends at Catholic Charities, but then as a result, out of this group, we have people who share their story who then become members of our Speakers Bureau. So they go out and share their story in different groups. And we have them come to a school in Southeast Queens and share their story. And the woman who invited us said, "These speakers are amazing. Where did you find them?" And I told her about the program. She said, "Can you set a program like this for us?" Because they had parents, they had children in their school who were living in transitional housing. So we set up a program for the parents. And it was our first replication. The first time we took this model and we created it for another group. And then, a few years later, another church, one of the mentors from the Catholic Charities program was a member of another church. They set up another program. And then about 10 years after that, I think, or 15 years after that, about 10 years ago, we got a grant from a family foundation that said, "We love what you do, we'd love you to help you share it." So then I became the Johnny Appleseed, or as my friend George tells me, I think he's the Peter and I'm the Paul of this founding. He's the rock and I'm the evangelist. So I then helped create other programs. We created a program for homeless veterans, we created a program for domestic violence survivors, we created a program for people coming out of prison. And as a result of this, people at Fordham University learned about the program. They did they allowed us to do a few workshops at some of their conferences, a group called the Beck Institute on Religion and Poverty. And then they got really interested and they started doing some research. They also got very interested and then they started developing some programs, some training materials, and now they've helped create other programs. There are now, I think, 9 or 10 programs using this model, and we've graduated probably 1,400 people since the program started. And I know many of them, and it's really been a great privilege to see people kind of find themselves again. But one thing that they've done, now let me say that when we started this program, it was our sense that what we wanted to do is help people, obviously, to cope with life more effectively, to deal with the trauma, to deal with the crisis, and also to reduce the trauma. So that was our intent, to reduce the trauma, to help people heal from the trauma associated with their homelessness. That was always the language we used. But we were never measuring whether that would happen. We just figured it was, using our intuition. But Beck came in and they put together a vehicle to actually measure how we were doing this. The first measurement tool they used is something called sense of coherence. It was developed by a researcher in Israel working with people who survived the Holocaust. And the question was, what characteristics are required to help someone recover from trauma, get your life back together after everything falls apart? Sense of coherence, an ability to cope with life after crisis. And there are a series of questions that you ask, and basically what they've done is, so we start our program, and then a week or two later they come in they issue a questionnaire with about 70 questions or something. And then a week after graduation, they do the questionnaire again, and they do a group conversation, kind of debriefing. And then 6 months later, they do the questionnaire again, and they'll do individual interviews. And so the questions are something like, when I walk into a room, I expect that, 1, everybody's going to be very friendly, or 5, everybody's going to ignore me or throw rocks at me or something. So it's a whole series of questions about how do you deal with your environment, what are your expectations, and then they track the progress. And for the most part, the results have been very encouraging. In fact, in particular with the program for domestic violence survivors, they're off the charts. Interestingly, with the program for homeless veterans, we've learned some things in this research. What we've learned, for example, with the domestic violence survivors, these women have already acknowledged their trauma. They've already been talking about their trauma. We find them through a place where they went to after they had to leave their home. So they've already started the process of healing. Where on the other hand, the veterans, if you have a veteran who's become homeless, it turns out that when they were in the military, there were some issues that were kind of kept together because of the structure of the military. In the military, you don't have to worry about where you're going to eat, or what you're going to do, or where you're going to go. Everything's decided for you. You have a built-in structure. When you leave, if you don't have a support system, everything falls apart. And so we've learned that the people who are homeless, who are in the military, had a series of childhood traumas in many cases that were masked during the military, and when they left, it all became very important, very evident for them. So they didn't begin our program acknowledging that they had trauma. So we actually had to introduce, in the process, we were introducing the fact that there was trauma in their lives. So the research showed us that something wasn't working in some cases, and then we had to figure out why. But with the domestic violence survivors, because they were already dealing with their trauma, these women, it was like you took a plant from the dark and you put it in the light, and all of a sudden it was just flowering. And it was an amazing thing to see how effective the program was. And on the other hand, I'm probably one who's been at more of the programs, I helped start many of them, than anyone else, and I could tell which programs were working, which ones weren't. Because remember, what we're trying to do is create a sense of order and structure and predictability. And when the programs weren't managed properly, so for example, we did one with the Brooklyn Borough President's Office, and this for ex-offenders, and the group insisted that all the staff were ex-offenders, and it wasn't run very well. there was really no, in some cases, some of the semesters, there wasn't any professionals, so they'd start late, or they wouldn't stick to the schedule, or somebody would have some issues and they'd go on forever, or some of the coordinators would just be sharing their own wisdom with the group instead of doing what was on the program, and you can tell. People didn't have a sense of structure, a sense of predictability. In those programs, the results were not very good. So the research really helped us tremendously to learn which were working and which weren't, and then try to figure out why. Then we also added the measure of trauma. There's a certain trauma level that you can detect in people. Above a certain level of trauma, it suggests that people should get therapy. Most of the people who start our programs are above that level. They're not in therapy, but most of the people who are homeless, obviously, they're dealing with a tremendous amount of trauma. So in many cases, their trauma level dropped below that level after our program. In some cases, they didn't. In fact, in one case, not a program that I created, but one up in Westchester that was for ex-offenders. And the church that sponsored it insisted that the coordinator be a woman who's an ex-offender. Their trauma levels went up. She had a lot of ego needs, and she wasn't very coordinated, and these people ended up worse off than they started. But again, these numbers indicate, they show us that. So in this case, with these programs, research was vital. Now also, Beck is trying to use this research to indicate the value of this program, because they are trying to put proposals together to some large national bodies, so they can really get funding to take this thing and expand its scope tremendously. I mean, we're now doing 10 programs, starting them one at a time. They like to get a big grant and then allow us to, I don't know how many numbers, but really, if this thing really serves people, then shouldn't it be out there more? They believe that these numbers will help them to make that happen. So again, the research is crucial if we really want to do some good and spread this thing. The other area of the work that we do, as I mentioned, is advocacy. So we're basically working with groups, faith groups, all different faiths, and in addition to saying, help us with these life skills programs, we're also saying, if you're really concerned about homelessness, then you should understand what policies go into creating, sustaining, or resolving homelessness. But it's not a priest's or a rabbi's job to figure out public policy. They don't know 421A or Intro 214, or they don't know that. Most people don't know that. But supporting or fighting those things is a way they can take their religious values and make them kind of apply them to general society and to help their congregants. So that's what we do. So we work with advocacy coalitions across the board and try to figure out what policies will really make a difference. So I'll give you a few examples and how research has been helpful in each of them. So in New York City, the last year under Mayor Bloomberg, which was 2013, 29,000 households were evicted in housing court. 29,000 households became homeless or had to move someplace else because they were evicted. And it's estimated that about half of them would not have been evicted if they had a lawyer. Right? 14,000 homes would not have been lost if people had a lawyer. 14,000 homes. I mean, that's horrible. 14,000 families, only because they didn't have a lawyer. So when Mayor de Blasio came into office, he was very aware of this, and he started to add money into the city budget to provide legal assistance in housing court. And as a result of adding about $50 million a year, he's reduced evictions by 24%. But still not enough. If we should be able to reduce, according to the initial numbers, we should be able to reduce evictions by 50%. If half people would not be evicted without a lawyer. So, as part of this coalition called the Right to Counsel Coalition, the Interfaith Assembly has been working with a very broad coalition to try to get the mayor and the city council to agree to offer the right to counsel, the free right to counsel for everybody up to a certain level of income. And they have now committed that in the next budget, everyone up to 200% of the poverty line, which is about $50,000 for a family of four, will have an attorney for free in housing court. And it's going to take about 4 years to build the capacity, because the fact is housing law is very complicated. In fact, the lawyer who's heading this campaign there's a book on housing law. There's a book of housing law. It's about this thick. He wrote the book. He updates it every year. He just gave me a copy. That's how thick the book is. And so not enough lawyers know all those 1,024 pages of housing law, and it'll take us a while to train enough. So consequently, it's going to take 4 years to cover everyone, and the city has to decide who gets coverage first. How do they prioritize? And so even though there's a commitment to pass the law, the Right to Counsel campaign is having meetings about how do we help the city make sure that the rollout is the most effective. And so, for example, the city is saying that in the areas where they're doing development, we're building big housing units and the cost of housing is going up. Obviously, a building next door to a new luxury housing property, that landlord's going to say, wow, I can get my people out and I can get a lot more for this apartment. So that area, those zip codes, are where the city is targeting its help. But how about seniors, low-income seniors, who will get an eviction notice and they'll say, I'm leaving, I'm sorry, please give me a few more weeks, when they're not legally required to leave. And this is, happens thousands of seniors a year. So we're suggesting that we prioritize, in addition to those zip codes, we prioritize low-income seniors. We're also suggesting that the landlords that have a history of evicting people through harassment, through frivolous lawsuits, we should target them as well. Because those landlords are going to say, well, I got 3 years to get everybody out. Let me go at it. I'll add my lawyers. I'll put more goons in the buildings. I'll break more doors. I'll have construction happening. I'll make these people crazy so they can leave so I can make more money. So, but being able to provide the statistics to the city and say, these are the people, in addition to those zip codes where there's development, these are the people who are getting evicted, that is going to help us make sure that this law is rolled out most effectively. Another thing we're working on is, in fact, we've been in front of the governor's New York City office. Yesterday was our 34th Wednesday in front of the governor's office. Is something having to do with building housing for the mentally ill. So we got the mayor and the governor to commit to building 35,000 units of housing for them, and supportive housing with support services for the mentally ill. And the reason that we know there's a need is because I think it was the Corporation for Supportive Housing did a study and determined that there are 20,000 households a year that are qualified, approved for supportive housing, but only 1 out of 6 get the housing. So there are 16,000 or 17,000 households that are either homeless or inappropriately housed, or households including that's individuals and families, who are not getting the services they need. So there are people in hospitals, there are people in jail, there are people on the street, there are people in shelters who need support services. And without them, they're suffering. And without them, they're suffering, and some of them will die. But that study, that statistic, is very helpful in us advocating for the need for this many units over this many years. And the mayor has made a commitment to 15,000, and he's already released an RFP, request for proposals, for 7,500 of them. The governor has put money in the budget for the first 6,000 units, but the reason we've been in front of his office is because for the money to be released, there needs to be an agreement between him and the legislature, and they haven't agreed. So it's called a memo of understanding, and there's $2 billion sitting in the budget waiting for this letter to be signed. Now the budget's supposed to be finalized, this next budget is supposed to be finalized on Friday, and we've been in front of his office because he's now promised, I'm going to give you the $950 million, and it won't require a letter, an MOU, and we're saying, well, okay, keep your promise, that's why we're here. So we just had about 30 people in front of his office yesterday, and we were there last week, and we were there the week before, and we'll see. But the reason we can justify the need, and the reason that they committed to the production is because we have the numbers. And another program I'll cite for you is this thing that we're working on, which is called Home Stability Support. And just for your information, when people are on public assistance, they get a certain amount of money, and they're public assistance check, which is called the shelter allowance. It's supposed to help pay for their housing. But for the last 40 years, the shelter allowance has not been enough to pay for housing. In fact, now, a single man will get $410 a month to pay for an apartment. Pretty hard to find an apartment that you live in. And for families, it can even be less. And so there's a whole series of subsidies that have been created, but they've not been enough, and they haven't been for everybody, and you have to qualify in this way or that way. So this new proposal would make money that's now being used to shelter people available to help pay people's rent. So for example, a family can stay in a welfare hotel. The welfare hotel will get $3,500 a month to shelter that family. And in many cases, they don't have a kitchen. So that family could probably live in an apartment for $1,500 a month. They'd be able to maintain their life. The kids could continue to go to school. The parents could continue to work. And it would cost us as a society much less. And we're looking also to see if the governor will approve this. So these are very important things. These are things that change people's lives. And if we didn't have the research, we didn't have the facts, people would say, you know, you're a bleeding heart. No, we're not a bleeding heart. We're saying this because it makes sense. So for every person that goes into supportive housing, we save $10,000 a year. There are studies that have shown that I think there was a book called $1 Million Man, a guy in Washington or something, who cost society $1 million one year because of all this hospital and jail and shelter and so on. So it makes money. It makes sense. There was a man who was at one of our Wednesday gatherings. Guy's around 60 years old. He spoke up and he said, you know, until I was 50 years old, I was a problem to everybody in my life. I was mentally ill. I was in jail. I was in the street. I was in shelters. Everybody in my life, I was a problem to. Finally, I went to Bellevue Hospital. I spoke to a doctor and he said, I know what you need. You need medication and you need supportive housing. You need a supportive environment. So now he's in supportive housing the last 10 years. The guy's a wonderful, sweet, gentle, articulate, intelligent man. There are people out there, 1,000 people out there like him. And we're spending too much money on keeping them, as I would say, on their knees, rather than spending the right amount of money to get them back on their feet. So in all these cases, research is crucial. So if any of you are considering part of your career being research, please do it, because those of us that are good at advocating need you to help us make our case. I want to say one more thing about the earlier conversation about the truth. And you know, I don't know, some of you may know the work of a man by the name of Marshall McLuhan, who was a real kind of visionary Canadian many years ago. And one of his key themes was the medium is the message. The way we communicate is part of the message. I think that in terms of truth and fact, it really speaks to the relationship we have with each other. It's not just what are your facts, but do we trust each other? Do we believe each other? Does it even matter what you think? Am I even open to learning something I don't know? So I think the whole question of being accountable to each other, having responsible relationships, is all tied in with facts and truth and statistics. So, you know, we need to be able to come up with the statistics, do the research. We also have to develop a sense of trust with people that we're sharing the research with. You know, I think it's so important for us to start off saying, I don't really know. Let me find out. Let's find out together. Let's learn together. Because no matter how much we know, there's always more. There's always things we don't know. And if we think we know everything, then we're really in trouble. So I know I'm always learning, and I'm glad you're doing that as your profession right now. I appreciate all of you doing your studies, and hopefully you'll be able to help us do our work. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Yes?
Good question, Mark. I know I really like the budget as a moral document.
Yeah.
Great. What would you say about the proposed budget for the new administration?
The federal?
Yeah, federal.
Well, first let me say that we see that these guys can't even count to 218, right? They couldn't even get enough votes for the overall. So, and they also didn't know how to write an executive order that would pass any court. So I think these guys are incompetent. I don't think they know what they're doing. And so they say they want to help gold miners, and they cut the budget for social services in West Virginia. I don't think they have any idea what they're doing. I don't think they're going to pass a lot of what they're trying to pass. I really don't think so, because the numbers don't add up. You know, and Trump will say more health, better health care, cheaper for everybody. It's ridiculous. So I just think that they're totally screwed up. We can't trust anything that they're promising. And he's promising one thing. You know, the head of the Senate, you know, what's his name, and the House is promising one thing. The Freedom Caucus is promising another thing. The Senate's doing something else. I think these guys, I have no expectation they're going to be effective at all. Of course, they're going to do some damage, but I don't think it'll be nearly as bad as we think. I mean, I think we've got a government on free fall, you know, on automatic pilot.
And then specifically, I guess, with HUD, what kind of implications?
Well, you know, let me say that one thing that may happen, I mean, tax reform may happen. It may be enough, they may be able to find some consensus on it, and the way it affects housing is that if you reduce corporate taxes, then these tax schemes, these tax benefits that where people will invest in housing and get a tax break. If your taxes aren't as high, it's not as advantageous to get a tax break. Your taxes are already low, so that may hurt housing. And I was just at a conference this morning. We talked about using church property and faith money to build housing, and it turns out that one of the most expensive elements in housing is the property. So that groups that have property are in a much better position, you know, comparatively with groups that don't, because we have the property, we don't have to buy it. So you know, you have to be nimble, you have to be responsive. But I just think that, and it's amazing. You look at every day we're thinking about Trump. I mean, it's so distracting. It's like he's on our couch every day, and we're all psychoanalyzing the guy. It's terrible how much energy is going into looking at this guy's, you know, mental condition. So I think we have to watch out. But I think, frankly, I don't think they're going to be nearly as effective at anything they want to do, because they don't have it together. They can't even agree among themselves. He can't agree with them. They can't agree with each other. The Senate and the House can't agree. And who knows what's going to happen. We may end up with Pence as president. I mean, frankly, the way they're going, it is not unlikely that in 2 years the House changes its complexion completely. And then you've got at least one branch of government that's able to hold hearings and hold the president accountable.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Of course, I don't know. It's not knowing. Who knows? Nobody knows. Any other questions or comments, thoughts?
Well, beyond being a scary time for, I think, all of us, yeah, for social services, I mean, that's a huge thing. It's like now with budget and federal funding, and that's a whole other question now. How can you be effective when you have a loss of funding?
Yeah.
Most all of it.
Let me speak to that a little bit in a kind of philosophical, but also I think a very personal way. You know, it is so easy for us to be distracted and to see what's wrong, what's happening, what's going to affect us. And that takes our attention away from us, from the resources we have control of. Our personal resources, our financial resources, our community resources. So that at this conference today, we were saying, we've got resources. The church, the faith community has money. The faith community has property. We have people. We care. Let's utilize what we've got. You know, let's invest in what we have. Let's celebrate what we have. Let's not give power over to someone else who may or may not do this or that. You know, fine, we have to be aware of them, but let's claim our own power. We have a lot of power unless we give it up. And it's now time to say, man, I'm going to do it because I can do it before they take away the power to do it. Yes?
I think it's a non-starter. Maybe as a social initial balance or an economy would be potentially of any value to say for every dollar we take from a social program, take a corresponding percentage from corporate welfare.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's so many things that we should do. I think raising the questions are important. I mean, they may never acknowledge, these guys never acknowledge anything. I mean, we know they're never going to acknowledge, I don't know if you watch Rachel Maddow, but they're just in such a habit of denying the truth in every single case. So we're never going to get to satisfaction they will ever agree with us. But you're absolutely right. We need to be putting these things out there because most people realize that what we're suggesting makes sense. We can't expect them, it's like a drunk. You know, you can't, until the person is sober, there's no one there to talk to. So you don't even expect it. Just try to defend yourself, make sure they don't fall on you on their way, you know, to falling on the floor. Yes?
So this might be a slightly unfair question.
Speak up a little bit because my hearing is not as good as the rest of me.
So when I studied abroad with IPSL last semester, and I worked with, this is something I've actually mentioned a couple times already at this event, but I worked with Cross Care Aftercare Services, which is a service provided to kids 18 and older who have aged out of foster and residential care.
Right.
And while the hub that I worked at was not necessarily intended to be a youth homeless shelter, out of the 12 kids I saw every day, 8 of them were homeless.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest problems in Ireland is that...
This was in Ireland?
This was in Ireland, yes.
So what age do people age out of foster care in Ireland?
18.
18.
Yeah, and there are certain bits of legislation that say they have specific rights. Up until the age of 18, they are protected under the rights of the child, which gives them a certain number of benefits. But after that, they're really out on their own. And one of the biggest problems in Ireland is that the state and the charitable or service-based organizations don't collaborate as much as they should, because there's sort of a feeling of the state that if Catholic organizations are going to take care of something, they don't need to put legislation that backs it up. So how do you navigate that?
Well, let me say that I think, as important as statistics are, individual stories are. There's nothing more compelling than a story, than a person. And I think you've got to get folks who can share that story. I mean, listen to an 18-year-old who's been through that challenge, and listen to the caregiver that's trying to help them without. And that will move some hearts. And then figure out what legislation is associated with that story. And then statistics. Well, this is not just one guy. These are 80 people. These are 2,000 people every year. And it's because of the cost of housing. And so you've got to match the personal reality with the numbers. You've got to have both. I think the stories are compelling. I mean, each of us, you can break through a heart with a story, right? And I also think you want to, as much as possible, speak to people and expect that they'll care. I mean, in the Jewish tradition, we say there's always a spark of goodness in every single person. Speak to that part of them, because that is real, and that can expand if they feel the connection.
I like what you're saying there, because a little bit about the state is like, well, research can serve service, and it's almost like the root being like data, but here you're talking about the story prompting the data, and that's very important to acknowledge that there's not one right direction to go towards advocacy, to go towards service, to go towards community organizing or social justice. It's a flow of information back and forth and collaboration in order to create a result.
It is, and it's also organizing. And if you're talking about elected officials, the things of most value to them are the most important thing is their public image. Also, of course, very important to them is the money that they use to get reelected. But their public image is number one. And if they can't use their money to paint a good public image, then they're out. So organizing to embarrass people or to challenge them to be the right person, to be good, to do what is the right thing. And we have to believe they know what the right thing is. Well, I just helped write an op-ed piece, and basically my last point was, we're saying to legislators, if you have faith, what does your faith challenge you to do? Answer your own question of your own faith. What are you challenged to do? If you're a person of faith, not fine. If you aren't, then what are you challenged to do? And I think we need to do that. And then hold them accountable. But the governor is a very slippery character. We're trying to paint him as someone who is either incapable or unwilling to make this deal, to de-link the developers' desire to get these big tax breaks with the need for housing for the mentally ill, which will save us money. And are you strong enough? Are you good enough to say these things are related? Or are you just going to throw up your hand and say, I can't do anything? Well, if you can't do anything, we need someone else who can. We don't elect the governor to make excuses. We don't elect you to do the easy stuff. We elect you to do the hard stuff. This is hard stuff, but it needs to be done. And particularly if you're going to blame the mayor for homelessness, then you're not going to even do your part. But it's a challenge. It's all of it. But clearly, facts are crucial, as are the stories, as is the organizing. Yeah.
I know it's going to take time for this to pass through legislation and.
Speak up a little bit. Sorry.
I know it's going to take time for this to pass.
At the federal level, you say?
Yes, but I think the solution would also be to try to convince these people in the higher positions to at least make it legal for homeless people to camp out in even public parks.
Right.
And even that would also, put an exclamation point on the whole process, and people will pass by
Right.
and say, oh, look, this is real,
Right.
because a lot of times, because it's illegal for homeless people to be around in public spaces, washing their clothes and doing all these
Right.
things, people don't get to realize the reality, But when you do get to see a homeless person in a public park, using a public bathroom, washing their own clothes, doing this, living in a tent, you get to really understand
Right.
it. So maybe if there's a law that pushes through and says, okay, at a public park past a certain time, homeless people can actually live there.
Right, and there's that's often called the right to remain, right? And there's some municipalities that have made it illegal to be homeless and to feed homeless people, or to, to sit down and, or have bags. I mean, they can define it any way, and that's horrendous. Of course, my friend, the man who helped fight for the right to shelter, reminds us that, like the right to panhandle, wouldn't it be nice if we didn't need a right to shelter? Wouldn't it be nice if we had more than shelter? I mean, fine, you can have a shelter, which is great, but people need more than just a shelter. People need more than just the right to remain on the street. But you're absolutely right. The visibility is crucial. But in New York City, people have a right to shelter because of Article 17 of the state constitution that requires that we have an obligation to care for the needy. That's been interpreted as saying that people in New York City will get shelter if they come to the city and ask for it. And the city has an obligation to provide shelter. And that's hard sometimes because some communities don't want more shelters. So that's why we're advocating for more housing. Because as Andy Hevesy, the head of the leader of some of this legislation, said, Mark, an elected official can never win an argument for a shelter in his neighborhood. It's a no-win situation. You cannot win that argument. Because the fact is, nobody really wants a shelter. Homeless people don't even want a shelter. They'd rather have a home. So what we need to be advocating for is supportive housing, is keeping people in their homes. Because when you sell that, people say, yeah, that's what I want. That's what people need. That's what they deserve. That's what I want. And in fact, it turns out that it improves property values in communities. And when people are getting the right services, they're not homeless on the street. They're not panhandling. They're not making a mess. Because they're able to live like human beings. You treat someone like an animal, what do you expect? Don't give a place, they have to leave at 6 o'clock in the morning. They can't eat. They have no money. They can't go to a restaurant and go to the bathroom. What do you expect people to do? So I think the right to, people being visible is important, but it's only the first step. And it's horrible that places will even make that illegal. I mean, that is unbelievable, the cruelty. So how do you break through that, really? Again, I think it's the stories. And I also think it's crucial is a sense of vision. If we believe that, as a society, we really can't afford for people to be housed, if we believe that these homeless people are really worthless, they're never going to contribute anything, well then, that's what we're going to get. But if we believe that everybody has a place, which is a kind of religious perspective, if we believe that everybody deserves to have a place to live in, if we also believe, based upon the statistics, that we save money by having someone in a home rather than having them on the street, we have to go, because we still have an obligation to care for someone if they're sick. We still put someone in jail. It costs a lot more to keep someone in jail than in an apartment. So, but we have to believe that we, as a society, we can create a society where everybody has a place to live and where everybody can live up to their potential. I think that's the key. It's really a matter of the vision. It's, as the guy by the name of Buckminster Fuller used to say, it's a matter of scarcity consciousness or prosperity consciousness. We can imagine that there's enough for everyone. So we have to move on that belief. Until we have that, we're lost. Because people say, what's the point? They're going to be winners and losers. I'm going to be the winner, you're going to be the loser. Well, no, it doesn't have to be winners and losers. Maybe in sports, but not in life. We can all have enough to live decently. And people can give back once they have a chance to live decently. Yeah.
I also think of the reason why homeless people don't feel as inclined to protect themselves or defend themselves is because they don't know a lot about the law or what's going on, and they don't know how to, enforce lawsuits against these people in power. And I think maybe there was some sort of program that taught homeless people how to defend themselves and how to take their issues to court. It would be a lot more visible, and people just would start to give in and not go against these homeless people. Because at the same time, if I'm a homeless person and I'm fighting a lawsuit against someone in power, it looks bad for that person in power to be trying to fight a homeless person for a right that he supposedly has, and actually does have. So maybe that.
Well, you know, let me say that you're absolutely right. Homeless people, we all need to be able to stand up for ourselves. We need to be able to do it using the law. And there are some groups that are working closely with homeless people, helping them to advocate, and that's terrific. And we're actually working with our graduates and bringing them together from the different programs as a kind of support, alumni support group, because I think my concern is that homeless people, if they're seen as being confrontational, they're not really seen as being part of a constructive part of society. They're seen as kind of being destructive. So there are 4 homeless guys who were arrested, or not arrested, they were kind of accosted by the police. The police threw away all their personal stuff in a dumpster. Well, they just sued. I think they each got like $20,000 each for having their identity thrown away, because as you can imagine, when you're homeless, all you have, I mean, you get your identity taken all the time, you get your identification. So they won that lawsuit. But again, I think it's also important that people understand their rights, claim their rights, and don't do it in as much a confrontational way as much a standing up for themselves and saying, let's work together to make sure that we all have enough. So it's a delicate balance, you know, and because as I say, for example, the fact that there's not enough housing right now, if people go for an housing interview and if they're seen as confrontational, they're not going to be the ones selected, because the housing provider doesn't want that person in their apartment. They want someone else who's going to be more cooperative. So, yeah, we need to be insistent. We need to be persistent. We also have to be cooperative. We have to be respectful. It's a difficult balance when your life is on the line, when you're out there, when you haven't slept, when you haven't eaten, when people have been attacking you. It's very hard. I think for many homeless people, it's amazing that they're able to manage as well as they do. And we have to understand that they're doing really profound work to be able to come and speak with us with a sense of dignity and respect.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Thank
Thank you.